Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I am Tommy from the Close to Home Collective, and today I am sitting down with Janice and Marc. And the reason I'm sitting down with them is because this Thursday they will be facilitating the Sublime Imprecision Writers Workshop. So that's going to be this Thursday at 7 o'clock, and we're going to find out a little bit about it right now. Janice, can you start us off by just sort of explaining what you do and what you and Marc do, your working relationship, and yeah, can you speak on that?
Sure. I felt like there was like a void on the peninsula um, for performance art, and I had the idea that uh, I knew a lot of writers because I was doing this thing called curated words over at Juice and Java, and so I'd recently met lots and lots of writers, and I could see how like eager people were to share their work. So I got the idea of, working with local writers and, you know, adding like dance performance or video and other things to what they were doing to create performance art locally. And so Marc was one of those people. And usually I start, I build my events with lots of different writers, and I create a prompt and I put it out there, and they all send their stuff to me. Uh, but Marc had this wonderful book that he was working on, a book of poetry, which I can't pronounce the Italian name for, and I'll let him do that. But it was about this typewriter underground, and it was just about this, these eccentric characters who all got sick and tired of the whole internet thing, and decided they were going to do everything analog, and they were going to type all their all their writing and pass it through the underground. And it's absolutely brilliant. It was, I mean, it was so like so rich in you know who the characters were, and the environments, and you know what transpired based on who the character was, and how the rest of the community responded to them. That I said to Marc, we should do an event based on this, and he and I sat down and we came up with an idea, and we ended up doing it at Henry Miller Library on June 15th, 2018, and it was a blast. It was so much fun. Um, we had filmmakers from all over the country, local dancers, the Carmel Delights, and then the group of dancers that I usually work with Carrie Newhouse and Genevieve Marie and Rachel Corvasi, and all these people, and we just wove it all together, and it was really fun. So, but Marc has written for many of my other shows as well.
And Marc, let's hear your side of that equation.
Well, that's a pretty good story, Janice. That pretty well covers it. Yeah, I read Curated Words once, and we got to know each other a little bit. And then Janice did two productions in very short order, one called Erotic Eclectic, and the other which was called Disparate, at the lab in Carmel when Henry Miller Library had closed down. They'd taken over a space there. And the Disparate one was really funny because she entwined my poems with Emily Dickinson's. And she had these two actresses walking back and forth behind me reading Emily Dickinson. And I was seated in a chair reading my own poetry. And Nelson Basden did the psychedelic light show for it. It was really quite something. So that was sort of the very, very beginning. And yeah, then we did the Typewriter Underground, which was at the outdoor theater in Henry Miller under the redwoods on a beautiful June night. And it was just gorgeous. And people liked it so much that we reprised it a week or two later at the Paper Wing Theater in Monterey. And we've been collaborating on things ever since.
Hmm. Well, I mean, it sounds like you guys bring something kind of truly singular to the area. And for me, that's enough to sort of sign up for the workshop just on blind faith. But for anyone else who is looking for more information, can you sort of explain what Thursday evening will look like? And I'll kick that one over to Janice.
Yeah, so we're going to start just with introductions and find out, who's there, and who they are, and then we're gonna share a little bit about our own stuff. I'll talk about how I put shows together, um, and Marc will talk a little bit about um, how he conjures the muse, and and then we'll have we have a prompt we're going to start with, um, and maybe we'll do some sharing on that. So we're going to do just a few exercises, but then we're going to do the main exercise and give them about 15 minutes to write on it. But basically, uh, most of the events that I do, I'll come up with a prompt. So for instance, I had an event called Femme Surreal, which I did at the Dolly Expo. I don't know what it's called now. Been through several names over the last couple of years. And I just asked writers to write from the point of view of a woman surrealist artist, or transgender artist, or non-binary artist from the 20th century, a conversation with them in Salvador Dali, and we had an actor to play Dali. So in doing that, we were able to touch on all these women's issues, and issues for transgender community as well, because we had one person did write on Toyin, who was a transgender artist, surrealist artist of the 20th century. And so, we touched on like abusive relationships, all of these kinds of things, but it was about art, So I'm interested in approaching topical subjects, but doing it in a roundabout way. So instead of hitting the nail right on the head, so instead of having a show about women's issues, it's it's a show about these women artists, and those issues rise to the surface in this really organic way, and I love that. I love that because it kind of speaks to the way that the world works. And if you're paying attention. I asked Marc to help because Marc is is a consultant for artists and so forth, and he has worked on a lot of my shows with me, and he's somebody that even though I have a lot of writers who I work with a lot, Marc is the one I mostly go to throw ideas off of, because he's good at that. That's his thing. That's what he does. As well as he's just amazing poet. I asked if he could help because I thought he'd bring some grounding to it, because I tend to be a little and and help me to structure it, and and it's been really fun so far.
So maybe I could follow on that by talking about the topic of the workshop. Janice talked about coming at things roundabout ways and from the side, and the title of our workshop is Sublime Imprecision, the Magic of Rough Edges. And that has to do with a couple of things. One is that oftentimes in writing and in reading writing, it's more interesting to see perspectives that come somewhat from the side, or that walk around an issue rather than nailing it on the head. And then in the exposition itself, writing gets interesting and beautiful when it's got rough edges and natural ebbs and flows in it. It's got a wabi-sabi quality to it rather than being very precise. So for example, saying something that's very clearly descriptive, like Tommy spoke into the microphone. He asked Janice a question. Then he asked Marc a question. That's factual, but there's nothing sublime in that. Whereas if you begin to say things like, Tommy wanted to scratch his head, but he couldn't. He was sitting before the mic. He was wondering who to ask the first question of. It seemed random to him, yet he had to choose. Then what we're doing is we're introducing elements that take you into state of mind, into physicality, and things like that, and it begins to create life. And then the other aspect of Sublime Imprecision that's really wonderful is when we're reading books, when we're reading poems, if those pieces of writing give us space as readers to fill in the gaps, to allow us to supply our imagination to what's going on, or make us struggle a little bit with the rough edges. So we're trying to make sense of what's happening. In that little bit of struggle, in that gap filling, that's where our imagination gets fired. And so the workshop is very much about helping writers begin to step out of merely accounting for things and instead attend to firing their readers or their listeners' imaginations.
Excellent. Well, there you have it, folks. That is the Sublime Imprecision Writers Workshop. It's going to be this Thursday, May 28th at 7 o'clock Pacific time. And it's important to say Pacific time because people all over the country and feasibly all over the world are welcome to join. Hey, thank you so much, both of you, for sitting down with me. And we'll see you this Thursday.
Thank you.